Hello friends, welcome back once again to my channel, and in this video we'll talk about how to handle the batch processing through our OData V2 service or V2 kind of a model. So I got a few requests from my YouTube friends, and they wanted to know in a very simple example how this batch processing works all about, right? So they're a bit new to this ABAP topic and rather OData topic, and so it's a little bit difficult in the beginning to understand this concept. So let's try with this very simple example. But before we get into the coding, as always, let's understand the concept in a very simple way. So what is the batch processing all about? So as you can see in the diagram, the left side is the client and the right side is the server. So our focus, of course, to build something in the server side in this video. So client will make certain requests to the server to get to know something or make certain process happening there, and server then process that request and send back a response to the client. So that way one server a round trip completes. Now, if client needs more information, client has to then send again one more new request to the server, and server will again try processing the same. So instead of making multiple requests to the server, it will be nice if we can bunch multiple requests together, right, in one packet and send that packet in one shot to the server to process. The server will have certain mechanism which will parse this packet and understand what are the embedded requests there and action items there, and they will just process one after the other. And once this is done, it will send back kind of a consolidated information, right, as a response back to the client. So this is all about a very fundamental concept about batch processing, and of course this is to improve the performance and kind of a cost, of course. So just to reduce down the server round trip. I think it's pretty easy at this level. At least we got it something. So let's get into the coding part, build something together from scratch, and things will be much more clear soon, right? So stay tuned till the end. And before you start, let's subscribe this channel if you have not done yet, and don't forget to hit the bell icon because this will intimate you the next time I upload a new content for you. Okay, so let's begin. So with the interest of time, I created already a simple table to store the employee data, and you can see the three fields basically I have added: the employee ID, first name and last name. Very simple thing. And now I'll be creating certain OData service from scratch to store employee records back to this table, right? So now I'm in transaction code SHGW, where I'll create our backend OData project. So click on this button and I'm giving that OD employee. You can employee service and click on OK. So now expand data model, and under entity types, I'll create one entity called employee. I'll also create them entity set at the same time. Now I'll add up a couple of properties. So I'll add ID as a key field, and I'll put idiom. I think it's in just 16, I think, yeah. And I'll be having ABAP ID as the ID because just the backend ABAP allies. Creating one more field called first name. It's an idiom string. I'm calling it as if name. One more field for the property. So let's copy this one again and put lm. So saving it, and now my entity type is created. I'll not make things much complicated in this demo. So let's create the runtime artifacts. And you can see this is the technical service, this is the model name, and certain DPCXT and MPCXT gets created. One thing to call out: never touch this DPC and MPC. Whatever the right logic you need to write, you should be using MPCXT and DPCXT only, okay? Because next time you generate this project, these two methods will be, rather two classes will be regenerating, so your productive code will be washed out. So make sure you don't touch this. So let's click on create. This is a local object, and technically it will create a technical service object side by side a few methods, class and methods. You see these are all created. That's fantastic. So let's our runtime artifact is done. So let's write certain logic under DPCXT. Predominantly I'll be using DPCXT in this demo. So the next step would be registering this service. So expand this one, double click this one, and now you can see something called register. So click on the register, and it will open actually another transaction code. So before that, in this pop-up, you'll have to click the package that you are interested and just click on OK. What will happen? So it'll be actually registration is done, but we can go to maintain, and it will open a transaction called main underscore service, or I think service underscore main, either way. So now if I double click on that, so you can see this status is active, right? So the service is already maintained, system alias auto adjusted, everything is auto defined, nothing much I have done, as you can see. So now what is the next? Just to click SAP get client or gateway client, it will open IWFND GW underscore client transaction. Okay, and now I'll be making a request, and voila, it's give me 200. Okay, so the service registration is all fine. Now we have to write our logics and re-implementing certain methods. So let's do that now. Now, one quick thing, when you register the service, it will actually create one node in SACF transaction code, so that you can just get to know how to achieve. So I think I have to go to C and run the transaction SICF, and you can put the service name as this one and click on execute. You will see this is active, automatically generated. Okay, so this is one thing. Without activation, this will not work. So when you transport some OData changes from one dev system to quality or production, this will not be auto active. Okay, so you have to do it individually or manually rather. Okay, sometimes people use a basis help to do this, but I just wanted to call out. Okay, so now closing it. And what next? Obviously writing certain custom logic. Select this one called dpcx3, go there to go to ABAP workbench. Yes, I want to save it. What happened? I didn't save this thing. Let's save it and regenerate once again. And now I'll be writing our custom code in this particular dpcxt. So right click and go to ABAP workbench, and it will open SC24 kind of this way. And so to start with, we'll do definitely in a simple manner. We'll first implement this method called getEntitySet, but make sure you click on edit button so that this button is enabled, called redefine method. Now select this line and click on redefine. So that way what will happen, it will redefine this particular method called getEntitySet, because intention is to fetch all the existing employees. Okay, all right, so let's write some logic now. So we're writing very simple logic like fetch ID, first name and last name from my table, and I have to map it to the export container, which is my entity sets, which is a part of the data model coming from all model provider class with the TT employee. So that's all generated behind the scene. So I have to just put that value into that exporting table, and that's all. So if I just put F1, syntactic should be fine, and let's activate this method. So now we have to run this method, right, to see the data. And before that, we have to ensure the table contains any data or not. So let's go to my table, click on table content. Is there any records? There are 0 records. So let's enter certain records into this table first. Utilities table contents, create entries. So let's put something ID as 100. Name is Somnath and last name is Paul. That's all. So let's saving it. The data is saved, and now if I just go there and take the number of entries, at least 1. So that is what the data we are supposed to expect as a result or response when we'll make a query to this backend OData service. We have registered the things, so I'll be using this one, and yeah, the service is up and running. So let's click on the entity sets, and which one we are interested, of course, employee set. Now if I make a call, what you can expect, let's see, and hopefully voila, it gives the 200. Okay, and you can see I'm getting the response. Fantastic. But long way to go. We have to do a lot of CRUD operation, batch processing. So stay tuned still. So now I'll click on this add URI option, and we can add something called format JSON as a query. Okay, so if I execute this, now I'll be seeing not in XML fashion, but in a JSON fashion, which is more easy to read. But yes, because of OData is a V2 model, so lots of metadata, unnecessary things we can see, which probably will be slick in OData V4 version, just to call out. Okay, so now this is working fine. So next step would be creating some records through our service itself, and that will be used later on in our batch processing discussion. So now the similar way will be re-implementing this create entity method. So click on that, re-implement the create entity, and this method will be responsible to create my employee record. So let's write certain logic now. So I'm just taking this entry, kind of a structure of my backend table. Then there is an input called data provider. So with that input request reference, I'm just reading the entry data. So whichever the data, I'll pass it during my creation of records from my client, right? So that data I'm just extracting from this method. And if I see the method returns really certain data, then we are just passing the content back to the employee structure, and we'll be just updating the record back to the database table. Yes, you can use the insert kind of a thing, but I am just using, I'm a little lazy person, so I thought to add the modify just to save certain time, right? Not much of validation, not much of exception handling I'll do in this episode, but the purpose and thought process is to focus more on the batch processing. Okay, so you can improvise things the way you want. All right, so let's check the syntax. Should be fine, I guess. Let's activate this code. So now what we'll be doing, of course, the next part will be testing this one, but now we'll not be using a gateway client. I'll be using something called Postman. Okay, so let's head over to this tool. So this is my Postman tool, and to create, click on the plus icon, and now we have to add certain URL. So for that, I'll be going back once again to my gateway client. Now I'll be using HTTPS ready button so that I can get a full kind of URL. Let's go back to Postman. Let's do pasting this one, and I need to add certain authorization. So I'll be using a basic authorization, and yeah. So now I'll just make a GET request, and hopefully I'll get certain response. The way we found or saw that in the gateway client in the backend, similar way this tool is working. Now next would be to create certain data, right? So for that, what we'll do, we'll be using back, create a new tab, paste this URL once again, but we don't need this time this kind of a format JSON funda, and we'll be using more of a HTTP method called post this time. Again, back to authorization, set to basic, go to body, and now select the raw, change this text to JSON, and I'll be adding some response over here. Now for the response, let's get this data back from here, so it will be a little faster. And this is what would be our data. You can beautify it if you want. Let's add something called John Doe. Okay, so this is something, my name that I want to update with a different ID, let's say 101. Okay, by the way, so I think we are good. So if I make a post call, will it work, right? Hopefully, or hopefully not. Let's see. If I click on send, it is saying that CSRF token validation failed. So it's an important learning. So we are making a post request to the backend. So for that, we have to add certain authentication token kind of, okay, which is called a CSRF token, cross-site request forgery. Okay, so this is what the token you need to add. How to get this token? Very simple. You can click on this get operation and go to the headers, and you'll find something called CSRF. Okay, hopefully if you don't find it, make sure you can click something called x-csrf-token. So this is the exact name you need to copy, and here you can put something called fetch. Okay, FETCH. Now if I just make a request, currently go to headers, you don't see something called CSRF token over here, right? But now we have changed the headers parameters with something xcsrf token, and value is fetch. If I click on send, what will happen? Now you see the CSRF token is now available as a header response. So this is what the token, copy it, and similar way go to your post operation tab, go to the header back, and again you have to put x-csrf-token and paste the value. So this is what you want. The moment you click on send, what will happen? Voila, 201 successfully created. Yeah, so this is the data actually it got created. We can check back to our table to see really it got created or not. So we can refresh it now. Really, it got created successfully. Perfect. So our create operation done, get operation is also done. And of course, if I make a get call, I'll be seeing now 2 employees. Let's also test it. Nothing wrong. Go to the body, and you see the 2 employees receiving as a get operation. That's what our baseline is ready. So next would be like this operation I want to perform in a batch processing, right? So this get call and this post call, instead of calling it independently, let's merge them together and create the batch processing. All right, now to start the batch processing, we need 3 methods that to be redefined. All right, so the first thing will be the Changeset begin, then end, and the process. So let's do it. So click on edit button. Let's start with Changeset begin as re-implement, and it's taking some time. Why? Okay, let's go back. Let's do the next one, which is end of change request. Yeah, and finally we have one more called process of change request. All right, so these three things we have redefined. So let's get inside this Changeset begin and remove this chunk code. And here we have to make one thing, that is a CV defer mode. So by default it's set to false. It's a boolean value, so let's explicitly put it as a false, and let's save it. So we'll talk about like how this defer mode, how it works. Just have some patience. Now the second thing will be the processing logic. So here we have to write our own processing logic, so I would like to keep it empty, okay, for the time being. And let's go for something, what, the end. So end process will be, obviously the name itself implies it will be triggered at the end of the processing. So we are going to create something, so obviously we need something, some sort of a rollback or commit, right? Now in the end of the processing we'll write the commit work only, okay. We don't need to write rollback in this method, okay. So there will be some exception handling. If something fails, we can raise an exception, and that way the rollback will be handled by the framework, OData framework itself. We don't need to worry much about the rollback, but commit work we have to just put it over here. So let's save it and go back. So let's activate, make sure that we haven't done any logic in the processing method as of now. Now what we'll do, we'll come back to our Postman and let's say copy this entire processing thing. So this is my kind of an entity sets, and we are doing the batch processing now. Now for the batch processing, we don't need any specific entity name to mention in the URL, so we just remove it, and instead that we'll be putting $batch. So that is the first step. Next step, authorization. We'll put a basic authorization. Now go to header, and here as well we have to add something called XCSRF token. We have already got to know like why we need it, so that value will just update later on. Let's go to the body section. There is one more thing. You have to add something called content type. Okay, so what content type we want to add? So content type we want to put multipart mixed. Okay, then we'll be adding a semicolon there, and we'll be define our boundary. So this boundary will define like what are the things that I want to embed in a package, my package boundary kind of. Okay, so I'm putting it as a boundary and I'm calling it as a batch. Okay, all right, so this is something a header request that I have set. What next? Of course we have to embed the payload request now. So let's go to the body part, and I have to click on raw and keep it text. It's fine. Now to start with, we'll be putting -- then batch and BATCH, and then we'll be ending with kind of a qualifier with extra right side -- so that way this is my boundary. Let's do first thing as a get call. Let's see how this batch operation does with a get call. Okay, so we're putting a get operation, and what we want employee set, correct? So that is what our entity set that we want to deal with. So what will happen if I just do that? I want something called accept. I think it doesn't work in application/gestion. Okay, so this way it will not work really, but let's see. That's fine. So if I click on execute, and it's giving something on a specified HTTP method not allowed. Quite obvious. I have done a mistake. I have to put this one get to post because I'm passing some body or payload, right? So that is the one mistake. So let's try once again. And it is telling that batch request payload is invalid. So this payload is not correct. So let us fix this now. We need to add a couple of batch header kind of a setup. We'll be telling this is an application type application HTTP, content transfer as in binary, and then we'll be putting this one. So make sure you have kept one kind of a space, otherwise this will not work. So let's try again and let's see if it works or not. And still it is giving a bad request. Now it is telling like the data service request could not be understood due to malform syntax. I could make it one time correct and show it to you, but I prefer to go step by step, so that because you will also encounter it's a little challenging, and you see how the difference of error message gets differ. That way we'll get some idea, like when you see or face this kind of issue, you know where your problem could be, and it will expedite your fix or resolution. That's why I'm doing this way. So now we can see this is a bad request, data service not available. So what the problem I have made, the thing is we have need more space, one line extra space before we wrap this batch. Okay, so let's try. And you see now 202 accepted. Okay, and it response is 200. Okay, so you know, like when you start this kind of things, if I remove one line and let's send, still working, but the end of my request and this the closure qualifier of my boundary should have a 2-line gap. So that's kind of a learning. Keep it in your mind when you just create your payload. This kind of spaces will make certain difference. By this now you understood the problem. So if I just click on send, as now I can see it's a 202 accepted, means payload is accepted, but it doesn't guarantee that your things actually worked. So that you get to know by understanding this response. And the response is 200 because the get call returns 200 if it's worked fine. Now you see the certain data it's retrieved, and you can click on the XML. Sorry, it should be a JSON rather, because why it's a JSON? Because I told over here that accept JSON, right? So this is, I told, like when you get the data from backend for this get call, whatever the response will get, it should be a format JSON. I didn't mention this one is a dollar format JSON this time, right? So this is how you have to just do things. Yeah, and the data is correctly retrieving. So the batch processing with a get call we have understood. So let's add the create operation, but this time create I'll do only individually, no merging of get in between. Okay, now when we'll start creating, let's keep the get, okay, because it will the first call get, which will go back to get the data, and it will return 2 entries. Then we'll create one more new entry through our payload as a create operation, and then we'll again make a get call. Then so obviously it will then return 3 entries. So let's see how it works. So to start with, again I have to create one more gap, 3 lines, and I have to again set my batch. Okay, so this batch is similarly is batch started, batch again started, but now within that we have to put one more thing, and that is the content type. Okay, so this time content type will be a little different than before. I have to put application, and sorry, not application, my bad. It will be the same way we added in the header overall, right? We added this one, right? So copy this one and just pay a little attention. Okay, it is easy, not much complicated. So again I'm putting a multi-part mixed, but this time the boundary I'm just giving, let's say Changeset, some name I'm just giving. All right, so that is the first thing to start. And now what we'll do, now the Changeset is actually started, so we'll be doing some Changeset, and let's put a boundary Changeset dash dash. Okay, so that way this processing I'm starting again as a create operation. So similar like get, I need to put the post operation. So let's put post. Now what we have learned, yeah, 1 difference is okay, or 2 difference is okay, but not less than 1 in this case. Then payload should have a gap of 2 lines, right? And this is something, a new data I want to create in the backend. Currently we don't have this. We have John Doe and Somnath, but Tom Cruise we don't have. So we'll be adding this new entry. But we have learned that we have to create 2 more boundary space, and this one can be like that. It's not a problem, but from this payload to this Changeset boundary closure should have a 2-line gaps. I think we have 1 and 2. So if we do that, what will happen, right? Will it create the things? First we'll run it. If it doesn't create, we'll fix it, and if it creates successfully, we'll go back to the database to see that whether it's created or not at all, and then we'll do little debug to understand the flow, because remember we have put CV the default mode as above false to see that how this navigation works, and we'll also change this to above true, and then we'll see how it works. Okay, so let's try this one to see what wrong. So it is giving that forbidden, and it is saying the CSRF token is needed because we are making a post call, so obviously CSRF token is needed. We added the header request, the CSRF token, but we didn't put any value. So we know by this time how to get it. So go to this one, fetch, and go to the header, and we know this CSRF token value is this. Control A, go back to this post call and put this value, right? So if I make a request, hopefully things should work. So let's try. Now 202 accepted, fantastic. Let's put a JSON this time, and the first it created Somnath Paul. It basically retrieved the data from the system, and now it returns a bad request, so it didn't actually work. So what wrong? So let's go back this time to XML to understand what went wrong. It is telling the property first name is invalid. Good, so that means we have added some property at the backend OData, right? So let's go back and see what went wrong there. Now you see, this is our property. We have a first name and last name, but because this is what my client will understand, this is what my server will recognize. But what we have entered in the payload, let's see, we have entered in the payload as capital first name. So it should be as exactly as we have this value, right? So let's paste it, and similarly last name copy, paste it. So if I just try now, hopefully it should work. Again 202 accepted, and now the JSON response, now 201 created, perfect. So this is one learning that how it doesn't work, then where could be the problem. And let's see what the response I got. Yeah, so this is some number got created. Ideally I should have given a different ID. I gave 100, but 100 was already there in my database, so it basically overridden with the value, correct? So let's go to JSON once. So I had only 100 Somnath, so 100 Somnath now replaced with the Tom Cruise. That's fine, but we understood now get and this post call we have merged. We'll do one more thing. We'll be going back to the database quickly to see how it actually works, whether it data created and how it's happened. AC16, and we have Z employee, and if we just run, we have still same data, because I told we have overridden Somnath for the Tom Cruise, but yes, we have this data successfully added. All right, so what our next thought process would be to understand how this navigation works, means how this data got created. Obviously, let's go back to our the class and methods, and what we'll do, we'll put one begin, and we'll put a breakpoint, but this breakpoint would be more of an remote breakpoint, not the session breakpoint kind of, okay? And we'll put some breakpoint as a change set end also. Let's put this also, because understanding is to learn, right, how things actually working. Changeset also didn't write any code, perfect, but still put a breakpoint here as well. And now we have one more method called create entity. There also will put a breakpoint, okay? So this is all 4 places we have put a breakpoint. And now what we'll do, we'll do little change now in our payload. This time we'll not overwrite. We'll put again 100 as Somnath, okay, and this one as all. Okay, so this is one, just we are overwriting pack with this one. And what we'll do, we'll rerun this and see how it works. Now sending request is stuck on, and it's my breakpoint triggered, and somewhere I have my breakpoint. So first is coming to this Changeset begin, and you see this default mode is false. If I group F8, it directly goes to the Changeset create entity. It didn't stop in the process of the Changeset. That is interesting, because this is responsible for my create. Now click again, hit, finally it goes to the Changeset end, and it's stuck with this commit work. F8 done. So now I will go back to our database. Where is our database? Yeah, refresh it. Yeah, now again this data get back to Somnath. Well, perfect. Now we'll do one more interesting thing, and that is we have put default mode as our false. We'll set default mode as our true, and then we'll see how it works. So we are back to our Changeset begin, and we'll be putting it to ABAP true this time. All right, and activate. Now we'll be activating this code, but this time we'll not change anything else, only this default mode as ABAP true, and we'll see how it behaves differently or not, or same. And what we'll do, we'll put let's say now 101, then let's do 102, and we'll put Mike D'Souza. Okay, something like that. So it will create a new entry. Will it really create or not? Let's try. So I'll hit the send button. Again, it's stuck. Let's see where it goes. Now we have set default mode as true. If I click on F8, ideally where it will stop, it is now coming to this Changeset process, right? This is a different than previous one. Now if I, and we don't have any logic, so let's execute, and now it end up, but it didn't do anything. Let's see what it's coming as a JSON. It still fetch John Doe and Somnath, but the below one, it is getting a 500 internal server error. Okay, it didn't work. So let's go back to XML so that you will get to know a little more what happened wrong. It is telling like something wrong, missing response data in Changeset deferred processing mode. What does it mean? It went through the Changeset process, but that it didn't find any logic. But also it was expecting the container which will send back the response about the creation, that is also empty. And that's the reason it returned this 500 internal error. It was expecting some response from backend because of no logic that fails, and eventually this is 500 internal error. So the next step would be to implement this Changeset process method, and we'll again try. So let's remove this junk code at the first, and then with the interest of time, and because I'm a bit lazy, prefer to put a copy paste. But I'll explain, it's nothing big deal. You can very well understand what's going on. So put a pretty printer first. So first what I'm doing, we have basically two input parameters. One is the Changeset request, which will contain the request kind of details, and the other one is the response. After performing the things that this Changeset, this changed parameter had to be filled. Last time we didn't fill anything, hence we went through this 500 internal error, but this time we'll do that. So first it's a Changeset request and it's a table, so I'm looping through this table. So now first it will go to the loop thing, and let's get the request context, what is happening, and then we'll get the get entity name, like which entity we want to process, because in your service or service there can be n number of entities, but for which entities, what kind of a logic, you need to definitely know the entity type, like that you have to write a logic for. And of course the second is the operation, right? So whether you are creating, you're deleting or updating, because all sort of operations eventually come through this method, right? So obviously your logic should be confined based on the operation type. So makes sense, I think, bit simple. And now for this entity, we're doing what? Same way, we are again reading the data, but this time I can get multiple post requests, right? Just like get and create, we can have multiple post requests. So we'll also see that. So what I'm getting, we're just extracting this payload information, and I will putting into some internal table of type my backend table, and I have used base 7.4 coding, so that each time it loop through, it will not flush out this table, rather it will append the entries, kind of a collecting. And here is the magic. So here I'm getting a reference of my response. I'm preparing a response, and I'm just telling like, hey, which operation it went through, and I'm inserting my change table. This is very, very important. Because of that, last time it failed. And now of course I have the data, and now I can update these records. All right, so this is what we have done. So let's do a syntax checking. If everything fine, right, wrong, ugly, I don't know, let's activate. All right, so let's retry once. By this time, I don't know, maybe my CSRF token got expired. That's fine, let's try. Voila, it's still not expired. Looks like it's coming to my default mode. If I F8, it going through commit work directly. Probably my breakpoint didn't set well. Once again, give me a second, let me see this time. 201 created, successfully created, no complaint, but my breakpoint didn't stop. I don't know, I have to just revalidate my breakpoint setup, and it's really created 102. So let's go back to my database, and if I click a refresh, yeah, this one actually got created. So now what we can do, we can do one more posting. Let's do a little more complicated now. What we'll do, we will add one more post operation. So how I'll do that, we'll again need this kind of a sim bunch. Okay, same bunch again we need. Okay, and we'll be adding this new post method. So let's paste it. Make sure I have only one gap is sufficient, but this one should be 2 gap, right? I think my copy paste went wrong. Yeah, I should have copied this one. I made again the incorrect value, sorry about. Yeah, so 3 and put Tom Cruise back, because I just added an incorrect property name. All right, so if I just run, hopefully now it will not complain. Perfect, it's stuck. Back to my Changeset, begin, F8, voila, it now at least stopped here. If I go to Changeset table, how many it contains? It contains both create step, you see, correct, both creation. All right, so now we are just running through this one, and entity type we just derived, and yes, employee truly, and operation is create operation, and my entity type matches, so I'm just retrieving this data. Alias data is actually fills with what, this Mike D'Souza, perfect. And I'm appending these records to this internal table called IT employee, added, and generating back my response. Again, looping through, again same processing once more. And now the next set of data I just received called Tom Cruise, and again I'll be appending. So the second record got appended, Mike and Tom. That's perfect. But next, of course, my loop processing over, and this modify statement has to work. So if we run, now you see commit work at the end. If I execute, boom. So this 202 accepted, and we have this data. And if I go to the XML version, probably I'll see this two GUIDs, one for the Tom and another for the Mike. If I go back to the backend table and refresh, hopefully I have this Tom Cruise, Mike, John, Somna. Perfect. So all things are added. As a developer, you have to test your service, right, before you give it to the front-end developers. So many of the people, backend developers, even don't know how to test their service. They only depend on the front-end developer. So hopefully this video will give you some breakthrough and you understand how to manipulate this kind of things over Postman kind of a client. Share your feedback, share this video to your network so that others can also get to know. Thanks for watching. We'll shortly connect soon. Till then, goodbye.